Hi, it's Sylvester, and I think that one of the most tragic things is having a story to tell and nobody who wants to hear it. I am somebody who documents a lot of my life through videos on the internet, and there are many reasons why I do this. And I've said this before in a previous video, but I think one of the main reasons why I do this is because I feel like I have a story to tell, my story, the story of my life, and I document my life because I want to tell this story as it's being written, as it's happening. And it's tragic because I've always felt like nobody wants to hear my story. Nobody really cares. And I know that that's not true. There are people who watch my videos. There are people who listen to what I have to say. There are people who are interested in hearing my story. But it's never enough. Never enough people. I want more. I want more people to hear my story. And I don't know why I want that. Maybe I didn't get enough attention when I was a child or something. I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a therapist or whatever. I don't know. But for whatever reason, I want people to hear my story. And there are parts of my story that I am not sharing, that I don't want to put on the internet. And I think that that's healthy. And some people might argue that I put too much of myself and my story on the internet and that that's not healthy. And perhaps these people have a point. Perhaps strangers, people who've never met me, people who don't know me, don't really need to know every last detail of my life. And perhaps there's some power in being the only person who knows your story. But and again, I've said this in a previous video from a while ago, I am gonna die. We all are. And I'm not saying like nuclear warfare is going to happen or like World War III or, I'm not like predicting the end of the world. I'm just saying that every human dies. It's a fact of life. You can't escape it. Everyone dies. So someday, maybe not sometime soon, but like someday I am going to die. And it makes me profoundly sad to think that my story is going to die with me. And it makes me feel in some way like I can cheat death if other people in the world know my story and know that I existed and cared that I existed. Because maybe these videos are gonna still exist even when I don't. And maybe long after I'm dead, people will still be hearing my story and watching it unfold through my videos. And that makes me feel like I matter. It makes me feel important. It makes me feel, again, like I can cheat death in some way. Because again, I am gonna die. And it makes me so sad to think that I might die and nobody is gonna care about the life that I led and the story that I had to tell. And I'll admit that my story is not the most interesting. There are interesting parts of my story, like the fact that I was kidnapped when I was 19, or the fact that I experienced extreme psychosis, vivid hallucinations, and delusions for over 4 years. Like, I think that that's interesting, but it kind of makes me sad that a lot of other people don't seem to think that's that interesting. And so, like, if those are the most interesting parts of my story, and people still don't want to hear it, then what are the chances people want to hear the less interesting parts of my story? Like how I spend my days and, when my PTSD flares up and like, the little things, the parts of my story that aren't that interesting, that are like painfully mundane and average. Who would care? Who would want to hear about that stuff? And it in some way amazes me that some people do want to hear about that stuff. Some people do watch my videos where I'm just talking about having a bad day or, I got into a small argument with somebody at my church, or like, like the little things like that. It amazes me sometimes to see that there are people out there who are interested in hearing about that and who care. And then there's the bigger part of me that is disappointed that more people don't care. Because I want to feel special. I want to feel important, and I want to feel like the story that I have to tell is a good one worth hearing, one that people want to hear. Because if people want to hear my story, it means people want me to keep telling it, which means people want me to keep living it, which means people want me to be alive. And I want people to want me to be alive. I want people to want me. I want people to care about me. I feel validated when people care and listen. I feel validated when I see a video that has a lot of views. I feel like I matter. And isn't that what everybody wants at the end of the day, is to just feel like they matter, like their life means something? Because I have a hard time finding meaning in my life. A lot of the stuff that has happened to me feels meaningless. Like like they say everything happens for a reason. But I don't know if I really believe that's true. I don't know if there's some God out there who purposefully crafted my life because, he expects something great to come out of it. Like I don't know if there is narrative structure to my story. Again, they say like everything happens for a reason. Oh, you weren't able to become a doctor because you got PTSD because you were kidnapped? That happened for a reason. God had better plans for you. God has plans for you. And like, if that's true, I can't for the life of me figure out what those plans might be. And there is a big part of me that thinks maybe stuff doesn't happen for a reason. Maybe stuff just kind of happens. Like, there's so many people on the planet, and so many of them are suffering, and so many of them die without their story ever being heard by anybody, really. And do they matter? I mean, all life matters. That's what we're told, especially human life. So, like, of course they matter. But, like, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? If a human life happens and nothing remarkable occurs during that human life and nobody really cares about that human life, did it matter? Did that person matter? Or was that life just a thing that happened in the universe? Just another random thing that occurred that didn't mean anything? Now, like, I know that that's like a very negative way to see the world and to see life, but I guess I struggle to be optimistic when it comes to stuff like that, because to me it does kind of feel like the world is just randomness. The world is just stuff that has series of things that happen, and not all of it has meaning, and not all of it is for the greater good. Not all of it is part of God's big plan that we're too small-brained to understand. Like, just stuff just kind of happens, and it doesn't really mean anything. And like, I want my life to mean something, because unless reincarnation is real, this is the only life I'm ever gonna have. This is the only me that's ever gonna exist in the world. And so for that reason, I want to believe that I'm special. There's something, I was raised in the snowflake generation. I'm a millennial, so I think I'm a special, unique, beautiful little snowflake. And so I want to believe that. I want to believe that I'm a beautiful, unique, special little snowflake. And, in order to feel that, I need people to pat me on the back and say, "You are, Sylvester, you're special, and you matter, and I care." And, one or two people doing that doesn't feel like enough. I need hundreds, I need thousands, I need millions. I need millions of people patting me on the back, telling me that I matter. Or even if those people aren't patting me on the back, even if they're saying, "Screw you, I hate you, you suck, and I don't believe in anything you believe, all of your beliefs are garbage," and like, like, even if people are hating on me, they still noticed me. They still cared enough about me to kind of listen to what I had to say, even if they disagreed with it. Like, I still mattered, even if they didn't like what they saw. They still saw me. And like, again, someday I'm gonna die, and it makes me feel good to know that people witnessed me. People saw me. Because I feel like a lot of people, their stories are told collectively. Like, most people have significant others, and most people have children at this age, and most people have friends, and most people do things with other people. And so when they're telling their story, it's part of other people's stories as well. Like that time that you and your friends had you went to the beach together. You're not the only one telling that story. All of the friends that were there also have the same story to tell, different versions of the story. Their story is going to be a little bit different from yours, but you all share that story. I've spent so much of my life alone, and I continue to. And don't get me wrong, I like it that way. I'm a very solitary creature. I like to say independent, but I guess you could say lonely. I have spent most of my life alone. And so most of my story is just mine to tell. Just me. I'm the only one who can tell it. And again, even if I'm telling a story where other people were involved, my story is going to be different from theirs. And I do feel like a lot of other people have stories that involve me where I'm not painted in the best light, where I don't come out looking like the hero. And so, like, I want my version of the story to exist and be heard by people as well, because I want people to know what it looked like from my perspective. And I could tell the same story twice, and it can be a completely different story. And it's not because I'm lying. It's not because I made the story up. It's because the story can look entirely different depending on what I choose to focus on and what I choose not to mention, right? Like, so like, if you've been watching my videos for a long time, you're hearing a version of my story that's not entirely the truth, because I exaggerate and I leave things out, and I tell things based on how I remembered them, and which might not necessarily be how it actually happened, because memory is a faulty thing. And so, when I die, my story is inevitably going to die with me, because no matter how well I try to tell it, no matter how well I try to document my life, no matter how many people watch my videos and hear my story, it is just a version of the story that is not entirely the real thing. And so, what was it, Donnie Darko, I think, that said, every single person dies alone. Everyone on the planet dies alone. Something like that. It's true. Even if you're surrounded by people, even if there's been people there your whole life to witness your story, nobody's been in your brain. Nobody can really know what you saw, how you saw the world, how you thought. Like your story dies with you, no matter what. And to me, that's really scary, and that's really sad. I think Hank Green said that your life is a story you tell yourself, and that's a really powerful concept to me. I don't know if Hank Green's the one who like first said that, or if he got that from somewhere else, but pretty sure Hank Green said in his novels, I literally just read his novels, my memory's so bad, but I'm pretty sure in his novels somewhere he said, your life is a story you tell yourself. And so you can change your story, you can change it based on how you tell it. And that's does your life change based on how you tell your story? I guess not really. What happened is what happened, and you can't change that. But again, based on what you choose to focus on and what you choose to leave out, your story can be completely different if you choose to tell it a different way. And so maybe my problem is that I'm telling my story wrong. Maybe my problem is that I'm looking at things the wrong way. Maybe my problem is that I'm not a good storyteller. Maybe people would want to listen if I was better at telling my story. You know, maybe the problem isn't that the story's not interesting, the problem is how I choose to tell it. I don't know. Anyways, that's all. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Stay frosty. Bye.